wonder this place needs to be big with all the stuff they've got to fit in there for those events. Now, we have talked, haven't we, so far this evening about trade, diplomacy, tech, AI. Now I want us to look particularly at skills and the next generation of people who will reshape the economy here in India. Who are those people who will reshape its future? The bold ideas, the hard lessons, and everything in between. I want us to talk about the next generation crew who will rewrite India's story. And so I'm going to hand you over to Dhruv Goyal, who's the Chief Executive of FourLion Capital, and his panel. Please welcome him.
I think I'll ask each one to come up individually as I introduce them. So maybe I'll start. Firstly, thank you very much for giving us the time and the platform to discuss not just what's happening in India, but what's happening in the world. Did something major happen over the last 72 hours? I don't know, there's some scared faces in the audience. But I can't think of a better group of individuals to dissect what's happened in the last 72 hours and where we are going than the group that's going to follow. So I'll introduce them in descending order of age, even though Vaaman looks like he's 25. Vaaman, why don't you come up first? Come. Vaaman is Vice Chairman of the Motherson Group, which is one of the world's largest auto parts and auto components manufacturer in the world. And when I thought about introducing each one of them, not only are they dear friends, but I also wanted to highlight one incredible accomplishment of each one of them as I introduce them. And what's amazing about Vaaman is he's used the legacy Motherson Sumi brand and the production capability to now become one of Apple's biggest suppliers. So that diversification into becoming a supplier to the EMS ecosystem is quite remarkable. And I'm very excited to hear from him as Motherson sells in about 44 different countries in the world. So he's actually cracked the India to the world story. So very, very excited and very grateful to have you. Next, I think in age, we have Harsh. So come on, Harsh. He's the star of everyday IPL games. Come. He needs no introduction. He's running Dream 11 that hooks about 20 crore people onto their platform every evening, particularly during this 2-month period. He's built something truly remarkable. It's a startup that the whole country is extremely proud of. He's the poster child of entrepreneurship in the country, despite coming from a distinguished family and a family that's done incredible work in the old economy. So it's great to have Harsh on as well. I think Jay, you're next. Please welcome him. Jay runs Kotak's 811 business. So, now that he's come without a tie, it's very clear that he's on the fintech side of Kotak Bank. And so a bank that, we all know very, very well, but he spearheaded Kotak's entry into fintech, its ability to open accounts in a digital fashion. And he has a bird's eye view of what's happening in the economy when it comes to the health of the consumer, loans, both secured and unsecured, and very excited to hear from him as we go through the conversation as well. And last, but certainly not the least, Parth, please come up on. If I had to list all of Parth's positions within the JSW group, our full 35, 40 minutes will go just in that. But Parth is, running a bunch of different businesses within JSW. What's remarkable about Parth's work is the nuances with which he can speak about the auto sector, the cement industry, sports in our country. I mean, JSW, in my opinion, has done more for non-cricket sports in our country than any other organization that I can think about. And it's remarkable what he's done. He's been leading their cements effort, which is going to go public later this year. And so we're very, very lucky to have him on this panel as well. So we've really got a remarkable group of folks, and wanted to start by introducing everyone. So let's give them all a big round of applause. So let's start with the beginning. Vaaman, why don't you tell us about what it was like to get started? What was the first job within the organization? Where did your father kind of send you? What was his first mandate to you?
Well, thanks for having me. Now I need to jog my memory because he says I'm the oldest here, the most ancient, so I need to think about that for a second. But look, when I started, for me it was very simple. I graduated in 2008. Kind of feels similar to today.
Right, maybe, yeah.
So really didn't have much of a choice. I was in New York, right at the epicenter of the Lehman crisis, and it was an opportunity of a lifetime because a lot of the auto components were going down. Auto companies themselves were filing for bankruptcy, and we had this huge opportunity to acquire a company that we had been in joint venture with for 18 years, but we were 1% of their global sales. So we were literally a small speck in the entire thing, but they were owned by hedge funds, and we were asked by the customer to take it over. And overnight, from being an Indian company, we became a multinational, and it was the size of our group. And I remember very clearly because I just graduated from my MBA degree, and I looked at the debt on this company. It was some 330 million euros. And I tried to convert it into rupees, and my pocket calculator came up with an error because there were that many zeros in there. But that was the start. I think my father just pushed me into the deep end, and it was very much swim or sink, and our whole group was on the line, and that was my real MBA. So I think those kind of experiences really teach you what's necessary in the world. And I'm grateful for that experience because till you don't go to the edge, you don't really know what you're made of. So very grateful for that time. Had a great team to make that a success. But yeah, I think all these moments that we are talking about now, these are defining moments, and people who see the opportunity in these situations are the ones that are going to really define what the future is like.
Very interesting. Harsh, do you want to tell us what it was like to convince a old economy family business that you want to start this new tech platform to convince people to get into the fantasy cricket world?
I'm still working on it. But yeah, it wasn't easy convincing. My dad comes from like real estate and finance, right? And then imagine a 21, 22-year-old kid coming and saying, you know what, I'm going to start a website. And I'm going to, I need like 10 crore to get the business up and running, which is like 50 crore maybe today. This is 18 years ago. And not just that, when my dad asked me, what's your business model? I said, well, my business model is that we're going to let everyone play for free and then give prizes. And the conversation was just dead silence. He's like, no, how do you make money? And I was like, when millions of them come, we'll show ads, right? And that conversation didn't go well. And he was right. And we tried that for a few years and burnt through all of it. And then pivoted to a freemium model after 5 years of pain and suffering. And that started working. And then when it started working, we took another 5 years to get to profitability. And then once we got there, then my dad was like, okay, now this is a business. So today he at least, now
he
he's
acknowledges
like, okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
No, he's been always been my biggest critic, but now he's also my biggest advisor and the one I pay the least, 0.
No, that's wonderful. Jay, after you graduated HPS, how did you think about what was the first role within Kotak that would make sense, and how did you stumble upon 811 and built it into the franchise that it is today?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I started my career at Kotak. I started my career before the MBA, but as far as Kotak is concerned, in the investment bank, doing transaction advisory, M&A buyback, stuff like that, which was great fun. I moved to the consumer side a couple of years later, and I felt that that was a very transformational period for fintech and technology in India, while also feeling that banks need to do a much better job than they did in terms of how we serve our customers. So 811 was born on 8th November 2017. 811, which
2016.
8th November 2016. Dhruv knows my history better than me. As the
811.
As the date
What
of,
happened on that day, Jay?
a small event, some of you may have heard about it, it's called demonetization. And it profoundly changed India. That came along with the tailwind of UPI, tailwinds of every Indian having a cheap smartphone, every Indian having high-speed data, and then a couple of years later, the shock of COVID that did what the other things couldn't do, which is changing the mindset of Indians away from touching currency to transacting digitally. So it's been 7.5 years with the bank and around 5 years with 811. It's been a great ride.
You know, I had the great privilege of visiting Jay's office, and I couldn't believe that 811 and the way he's set it up could exist within an old school bank the way Kotak is, in that it felt like a tech company, you know, all the open floor office space and everything. So it's really remarkable that he's been able to build that within such a large kind of legacy organization. Parth, do you want to tell us about how you've navigated things? You know, before Parth talks about his experiences, I must highlight, you should watch his interviews from Davos this year. It's quite remarkable that he can go into the nuances of EV batteries and still elevate the conversation back up to cement pricing and IPOs and that kind of stuff. So the breadth of your knowledge is quite amazing. So tell us about your start. Where did Mr. Jindal kind of put you first, and how did you work your way up the organization?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for having me, Dhruv. No, for me, I think when I came back from the US in 2012 from undergrad, I worked for a year in New York and Tokyo, and then I was part of a team of JSW Steel that actually went to Japan to learn about making auto-grade steel, because back in 2013, India didn't have a single factory that could make auto-grade steel. So that was my first experience back in the business. And when I came back, I was trying to figure out what to do, and I had a choice of either entering the one of the two publicly listed entities of JSW, which was either the steel business or the energy business, or look at, you know, some of the private companies within the JSW group. And I actually stumbled upon 3 of our loss-making businesses. We had a cement business at the time, which we were about to sell to CRH. We have a US steel business, which was losing a lot of money. And we had a small IT company. So I went to my father and I asked him that, you know, Dad, I could shadow you or shadow anyone in the organization. They're such great people. Or I could take over these loss-making companies, and I think I could, I don't think it could get any worse. They're already losing money. So he's like, yeah, that's a great idea. They're already losing money. If you can go and turn them around, I think you'll do something good for the group, and you'll also build your own confidence and credibility. And shut down the IT business very quickly, realized that we are a manufacturing group who knows how to manufacture in India, so we should stay focused on that. And now I look after our cement business, started a paints company, gotten into automobiles, and obviously the passion is truly sports, and the US steel business with everything that's going on. There's only, I think, very few people who smile when they hear about tariffs. When you're a producer of steel in the US, you definitely smile when you hear about tariffs.
Speaking of tariffs, I think this couldn't be the most perfect segue into that, particularly because your group is unique in that you obviously, produce a lot of steel domestically, have those steel plants in the US as well. But on the auto sector, as an example, dramatic reductions in tariffs could be very harmful to the domestic automakers. And if you take the Jindal group, it competes with the world's steel providers, but at the same time cooperates with a Chinese auto company, as an example, MG being that company. So how do you view this tension around tariffs? Is it, what kind of opportunity do you think the last 72 hours has created for India?
I think on the tariff side, I think we have to recognize that India is a developing country, and here cost is king. And if in order to scale in India, you need to have the right cost economics. Now, if a US automaker wants to come into India, please allow, I would request and I would urge the government to please allow them to come into India without any tariff, because I can tell you for sure they cannot compete in terms of cost.
Right.
And the cost of labor itself is so high over there that I don't think they can compete on cost, nor can they compete on technology. The situation is completely different when you look at China. China is the world leader in terms of technology for EVs, for PHEVs, and China is the world leader when it comes to cost as well. And if India truly wants to electrify its automobile industry and truly wants to become self-reliant, because today India has enough coal to make energy, India has enough solar power, India has enough wind, India has enough access to water. So there is no reason why India should be importing, millions and millions and millions of barrels of oil in order to fuel our motorways and fuel our cars, trucks, buses, two-wheelers, everything. So I think that's where we draw the line, that we say, okay, if we can bring in the right technology from China, there's absolutely no harm in doing that, as long as you're bringing in technology and you're not bringing in finished products from any country. So that's the way we view the world. Whereas in steel and in many other industries, the Chinese have always looked at India or looked at the world as a dumping ground. They need to employ their people in China, and for them, employment is much more important than profits. And as a result, they make other economies reliant on their product. And as soon as the domestic industry shuts down, they jack up the prices. And we've seen that in a bunch of industries across the world. And as a result, we need to protect those critical industries as long as we are competitive. At the same time, cooperate with them where their technology is the leader in the world, so that we can bring the cost down in India. And that's how we view the world and view how we need to deal with China or the US or any other country.
What has been a big impediment to breaking the cost curve in the auto sector? Is it just the batteries, the fact that we have to import the batteries?
Yeah, I think importing the cells and having the technology to manufacture the lithium-ion cells is truly, the knowledge that so far we don't have in India. You have it in, few countries in the world only, Japan being one, Korea being one, but China is by far and above the leader in terms of that technology. People are now trying to bring that technology into India with collaborations with Chinese companies, and I think that is the way and that is the future.
I see. Very interesting. Jay, you get a bird's eye view on the health of the Indian consumer. There's been a lot of debate about reasons for the slowdown in the Indian consumer over the last fiscal year. Any thoughts on what's happening there and where you see the Indian consumer and the health of their balance sheets over the next, call it, year or two?
So two things. One, we're still at $2,500 per capita GDP, which means that on a relative basis, we have to do not that much right in order to do better. And I think we are doing a lot right, so we start from a low base. Second, if you compare us to other countries around the world in the, say, $2,000 to $5,000 per capita GDP framework, our macroeconomic situation is far better. We have extremely high foreign exchange reserves as a share of our imports. We have relatively low household balance sheet leverage. If you think about the unsecured and credit card leverage as a share of US household versus India, India is in much better shape, and we have prudent recent regulation to not let that kind of spiral out of control. And thirdly, and most importantly, we have prudent government spending. India has consistently over the last many years run a quite pragmatic fiscal deficit. Our public debt to GDP is in 2 digits. Most developing countries are not. So I think we're in reasonable shape. That said, that old adage, when the US sneezes, the world catches a cold, very much applies. We should be humble enough to acknowledge that and be careful given everything else I've said.
No, very fair comment. Mr. Kotak recently tweeted around the unit economics of deposits. Any thoughts on that? Why have customers stopped depositing money into banks? Is it just the equity markets that's been pulling a lot of that deposit flow in?
So 2 things. One on the business model of banking. Banks at the end of the day are transferring capital from those with surplus to capital with those in need, and the spread in the middle is your profit, out of which you take the fixed cost. The cost of capital for most banks is some portion low-cost deposits and some portion term deposits and market borrowing. Over the last 3 or 4 years, low-cost deposits, certainly the last 2 years, low-cost deposits have not grown very much, which means the entire funding for most banks in India is coming from fixed deposits and bank CDs, which is effectively borrowing at rates ranging from 7.5% to 9%. So let's say if your average incremental or marginal borrowing cost is 8.5%, banks are still issuing home loans at 8 to 8.5. Banks are still issuing corporate loans to blue chip companies like JSW at 9.5, lower, somewhere thereabouts.
Otherwise, they'll go and borrow abroad.
Otherwise, they'll go and borrow abroad cheaper.
Right.
So you then have this situation where your marginal cost of funds is equal or lower than your marginal lending.
Right.
And that is not a great situation to be unless you can solve for the low-cost deposits. What's happening is that investments has become a large source of where deposit money would go, which is fine, but some of it, one could argue, has a slightly speculative nature. And gold and real estate continue, gold particularly over the last few years has continued to be a store of value. So there are challenges to the banking business model in India.
Very interesting. Harsh, moving on to you. I've always been fascinated by the operations of Dream 11 during this 2-month period. You probably go through incredible spikes in server usage at about 7 or 6:30 p.m., right? Maybe even a little sooner than that.
7:05 to 7:30.
7:05 to 7:30, right?
Yeah.
And managing through those spikes in server volumes, etc., must be an incredibly difficult challenge. So would love to understand or take us behind the scenes of what Dream 11, the product, looks like when 20 crore Indians are trying to sign in at the same time and put in a 50 or 100 rupee into the platform. So walk us through the innovation around that. And then more broadly, just talk about how Indian businesses are navigating through innovation as an idea and as a concept. It's been vociferously debated over the last 24 to 72 hours. So would just love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that. But it's actually, so what happens is, for all those that don't know, our fantasy sports platform allows people to come and make their own teams for a given match, and based on how you perform, how your team performs, your chosen players perform, in the real life match, you get points in the game. And so today, Mumbai Indians is playing RCB in Bhankade, right here. And so at 7:05 p.m. for the 7:30 match, lineups are out. The toss happens, and then the captains say who's playing and who's not playing. At which point, chaos descends on our systems, with, we're almost 25 crore users now, who then jump in to either make their teams or change their teams based on, today Bumrah's back. So you can imagine that the happiness of all the Mumbai Indians fans, the sadness of all the RCB fans, but also every single user saying, I need Bumrah in my team.
Absolutely.
And so everyone jumps in. Yeah. Even the RCB fans will take Bumrah in their team.
Of course.
So everyone jumps in, which is when, it just goes crazy. And so what happens is that this year, in fact, we clocked 16.5 million concurrent users, which means that on our app, at a single second, like a microsecond, there was 16.5 million people who clicked a button at the same time. And all of them need to be processed within that second. To give you context, some of you may know like a game called Fortnite, which is one of the world's most popular games. They have a peak concurrency of 14.5, 15 million. Ours is higher.
Higher than that.
This is some of the highest, one of the most technically challenging problems in the world. In fact, it is so technically challenging that Amazon, AWS, we're one of the largest customers.
Right.
And we've helped them build out some of the services specifically for this.
Wow.
To a point where they've invited us, and we're one of the 25 companies who sit on AWS's global board.
Oh, wow.
Which advises them on the kind of things that they need to build out for the whole, globe. And so, talking about the tech innovation, there truly is tech innovation because India is, the adage again, India is not for beginners.
Yeah.
Right? But that also applies for people who think that, okay, yes, we have microtransactions. So, the average user plays for less than 50 rupees on our portal, on our app. But there's 25 crore users, right? So like UPI has allowed us to build unbelievable fintech in India. And even though the transaction sizes are low, the scale is so ginormous that the amount of technological innovation that's gone into our systems, into UPI, is the best in the world. And so I can tell you that there's a lot of technological innovation going on, but I also agree with the last 72 hours, what's been said. I just think that give us a few years. Once there's enough tech companies in India make enough money and free cash flows that we can then reinvest into deep R&D, we will outpace even China and USA, right? Like, because the domestic market is just that large. With what you said about 2,500, per capita GDP, we will literally in the next 5 years, 10 years, have about 300 million people come into disposable income for the first time.
Incredible.
Which will be unbelievable.
And do you want to maybe just talk about how it has worked in the West with deep tech kind of spending? Some of the large hyperscalers and their ability to channel some of that free cash flow into that innovation.
Yeah, look, today we don't have a single tech startup that has $1 billion of EBITDA.
Right.
Right? And in the West, we've had Amazon, which was doing e-commerce. Meta, which was doing social network. We've even had in China Tencent, which was doing gaming, and Baidu and Alibaba and all of them. They've all been doing the same things we are doing in India right now. But then they had a decade or more of tens of billions of dollars of free cash flow, which today they're now harvested and putting into investing into R&D, deep R&D. Because in India, if you start putting $1 billion into R&D, the next year someone's going to come and say, "Acha, now we have to make revenues of this," right? And then suddenly you take a different path. But the only way you can do what the West does, which is say that here's a $100 billion check, and in 5 years we'll figure out how to monetize it.
Right.
We'll get there. So the sentiment that was spoken about recently is correct. It's just a timing issue.
Very well said. Vaaman, you run a very interesting company that has 85% of its revenue outside of India, which is very rare for Indian businesses. Most of our companies tend to be very domestically focused given the size of the market. So in some ways, Motherson Sumi has really cracked the ability to sell to the world and be an integral part of those auto supply chains. What have you learned over the course of this journey, and what lessons do you have for the rest of corporate India as it looks to sell beyond just the domestic market?
Yeah, we've been lucky because up till this EV boom came up, you could count the auto guys on your hands, right? So for us, the strategy for success was just really follow your customer, because an Audi in Germany or Audi in Mexico or Audi in India, you expect to have the same level of car no matter where you buy that car. So for us, it was very important to really step up that level of quality, that level of delivery to world standard. And if you look at that, there are very few industries in India that have had that opportunity to compete for global quality. There's no way Daimler would accept a car that's substandard, or Toyota, or anything for that matter. So I think that was our let's say our advantage, because we were already put into such a high rigidity of level of quality to be delivered, that we could take that discipline and take it to other countries. Parth was talking about Japan. Our first joint venture was Sumitomo. We learned so much from them.
Right.
So taking that learning, we have more than 40 joint ventures. So we have some of the best practices that people are doing globally. Taking that and combining it in a Motherson way, creating a Motherson DNA, and taking that to any country, and if you follow operational excellence, financial discipline, you can be successful. And for us, like I said, we're serving the OEMs. So as long as you are following exactly what they need, you follow your customer. Like we've done 45 plus acquisitions now. All of them have been at the behest of the customer. We don't wake up in the morning and say, okay, today let's go attack this company or that company. It's all the customers saying, hey, you did a great job with the wiring harness. Now look at mirrors. Now look at this. Now look at that. And we've taken that platform and we've now pivoted it not just to auto component, but engineering, manufacturing, and assembly. And we are diversifying. We're into aerospace,
Right.
Consumer electronics, logistics, medical equipment. And we found that this manufacturing piece still has to be done. We can talk about AI, we can talk about a lot of these things, but the hardcore manufacturing still has to be done.
Yeah.
And that requires a deep focus of people being able to come together and to be able to do it. Yes, you can use technology, you can use tools, you need the financial markets to help you do all of that. But the key strength is like people learning, adapting, and putting that into place. And in manufacturing, process is everything. So
Right.
once you get that right, you can really take it anywhere.
And how were you able to mold your manufacturing processes to even crack Apple? I mean, that's a difficult supply chain to be part of.
I can't comment on any customer. But I can just tell you, in the Motherson side, we are being looked at as a company that has successfully taken manufacturing out of India and been able to be successful globally. So when
Right.
people look at us or companies come to us, they're like, look, these guys do millions of cars. I mean, if you look at in the automotive side, if there is a recall or product recall, the impact is very, very large. So the quality systems are very, very deep. And cars are like, we're talking millions, right? 85 million cars are produced every year. So for the other industries, this is a very attractive place to get discipline, to get proper processes, and we know how to scale. So some of the largest factories that are coming up for us now are maybe, let's say, the largest factory we put up right now is the size of 33 football fields.
Wow.
Here in India.
Unbelievable.
So the size and scale is now ramping up, and if you've had that discipline to do it in the smaller size,
Yeah.
it's much easier to then take it to a bigger scale. So yeah, I think that will continue, and we're very excited about bringing manufacturing into India that we have relied on importing a lot of that. Now we're wanting to really do that in India.
Superb. One of the things that I think about a lot is all 5 of us on this stage have been extremely lucky in having just in some ways won a genetic lottery and being born to folks that we idolize and have really given us a great platform to thrive. Would love to ask about social initiatives within your group, within your company, separately within your family office or otherwise, whether it's in sports or just even just more broadly. We live in a country today that still has roughly 900 million people that live on roughly $3 a day. And so, it is incumbent on us to give back some of the prosperity that we've both inherited and built. And so would love to understand what each of you on this panel are doing from a social perspective as well to give back to this country that we love so much. Maybe Vaaman, you want to start and we can go from there?
Yeah, look, from our side, we want to do manufacturing, we want people to do it. So for us, Motherson has never shut down a factory. We will keep the factory running, and that's why we set up plants where people don't want to set up, in high-cost countries, and we have to figure out a way to make it successful. So our idea has never been to do labor arbitrage and to bring jobs back. We have to be locally successful and locally competitive. And for that, you have to use tools like, AI tools and more efficiency and better automation and all those things that you need to use. But for us, our purpose in life is to make sure that all the factories run, we continue to grow, we're a growing organization, and more people can be employed doing those jobs. In fact, if I just take a quick second, automation is talking about replacing people. Some of the cheapest people in the factory are the ones that are working on the line. Why would you want to replace them? You should be replacing more some of the indirect overheads, which is a lot more, and giving these people an opportunity to rise. So that's how we look at it, a little bit different. But yeah, our job is to secure jobs and continue to grow and bring more people into the organization.
Superb. So corporate with a real social purpose as well. Harsh?
Yeah, so obviously we are looking at sports, and so we run Dream Sports Foundation.
Excellent.
Dream Sports Foundation has about 8,000 athletes that we take care of in India. They've won about 300 medals. It's only 4 years or 5 years old, and we won about 300 medals for India. 3 of our athletes even went to the Paris Olympics, which we're very proud of. But I think going forward, more of our focus is going to be on 2 things. Is on grassroots. Grassroots sports is, I think, the most underrated part of what we need to work on, because everyone wants to work on elite athletes, right? Once you have a Neeraj Chopra, which came out from actually Parth stables, that horse is a stallion, right? Now, once you have that, obviously everyone wants to associate with Neeraj Chopra, right? But how are we going to create the next 100 Neeraj Chopras? Right? We need a bench strength, and we need that entire ecosystem. So that's what we are trying to work on more. We also want to work on across sports. Look, cricket is amazing. Cricket's doing great. It's our religion in India. But we really need to work on kabaddi, football, basketball, hockey. We really have to get that diversity of sports back into India. So that's what our foundation focuses a lot on. On the personal front, I actually love dogs, and my wife is a doctor and loves working with kids, and so we run a foundation called Raksha.
Excellent.
Which has centers in Mumbai for animals and for impoverished kids.
Excellent. Wonderful. Jay?
2 parts to my answer. One, I think India has an extremely progressive CSR law that ensures that all companies put a part of their profit into CSR, and that's very necessary to kind of drive that behavior. But more fundamentally, I believe passionately that CSR and what's good for business are usually the same thing, particularly if you want to make it scalable. If you think there's Coke available in Afghanistan, all around the poorest countries in the world, you'll see used Toyotas. That's all part of the free market system of companies that make outstanding products at lower prices. In India, you think about companies like Parle-G, you think about the sachet products, companies like Unilever.
Yeah.
This is how you scale to bottom of the pyramid. It's by building and maybe this is controversial, building for-profit businesses, because then that drives everybody with the right motive. For me, 811's first ever advertisement was Ranveer Singh on a railway station, meeting people of all caste and creed across the socio-economic spectrum, and obviously by virtue of it being at a railway station, it had a point to prove. So for me, our business of providing bank accounts and financial services to every Indian is in itself, I think, both a for-profit good and a public good.
Super. Parth?
Yeah, so I think it's a broad question, but I think at JSW, like Jay mentioned, the CSR law, we have the JSW Foundation, and I think the social license to operate truly comes from the foundation. So before we go to any location, the first thing that actually starts is the CSR work. So whether it's putting up the local school, the hospital, making sure that the direct impact zone is actually taken care of, because you can't be an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty. You have to take care of everything that surrounds you. So we do a lot of work in our DIZs, and I think about 80% of our foundation's efforts go there towards helping the agriculture, the farmers, helping the education, the healthcare, the whole system. On a larger scale, I think we do a lot of work in sports. That's something that I'm passionate about, and I think we've spoken about earlier. But I think we also give back a lot to higher education institutes. I think for many generations, a lot of corporate India has been donating to foreign institutions. And not enough institutions have been built in our country, and we have some of the finest institutions in India. So we've given large gifts to the National Law School in Bangalore, to IIT Mumbai, to Kriya University. We've set up the JSW School of Public Policy at IIM Ahmedabad. We've done things with Anant University, and we're doing work with IIT Banaras, IIT Delhi. So we're really trying to give back and create, make our top institutions even stronger, because they are actually some of the brightest minds running the world today. If you just have to look at the US and see how many CEOs are actually Indian and how many of them are actually from IIT to know that, the world is being run by people coming out of our institutions. And they don't get enough funding from individuals. They don't get enough funding from corporate India. So we're doing work there. And yeah, I think the CSR Act and the law of giving 2% back, we were working in non-profits well before that, but to make it formal and to make it mandatory is a really great step. And that's enabling a lot of work to be done in areas like education, healthcare, sports, and others. And I think at JSW Foundation, we focus on all these areas.
Superb. And, to your point, India still only spends about 1% of its GDP on R&D. And if you look around the world, most R&D actually happens at universities and higher level institutions like that, which is where, we need to give back. We need to create that culture of philanthropy, to give back to the organizations that we've been very lucky to have gone to and at the same time support. So I think that's a great mission. And as they say, there's no greater service you can do than giving someone a job. And all four of you have created lakhs of jobs in this country. So we're extremely grateful for all that you're doing, and hope to see you continue to thrive in your various respective fields. I'm being told that our time is up, so just want to give the four of them a big round of applause again for coming and sharing their insights on what was a great discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.